G'day, it's Mark and welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button and also that subscribe button as well so you don't miss out on any episodes. In today's episode, we look at the VG Valiant. The VG Valiant was produced from March 1970 to May 1971, and it was built at Tonsley Park in South Australia and also at Petone in New Zealand through Todd Industries. The Valiant VG was a facelifted version of the Valiant VF. It had a restyled front grille and now featured rectangular headlights. Sedans were also given new horizontal taillights. The rear end of the utility was virtually unchanged from the previous model. From the A-pillar back, the two-door hardtop remained the same as the VF and also the US Dodge Dart. Big news for the VG range was the newly introduced Australian-built Hemi six-cylinder engine. That was claimed by Chrysler to be the most advanced engine of its kind in the world. What a lot of people probably don't know is that the engine was actually designed and developed in Highland Park in the US, and it was designed to be an ultralight engine, and that was something that Chrysler hadn't really done before, and they thought that this was really pushing the boundaries, and it would change the development of how they would develop engines in the future. But it was they thought that was the right way to go in terms of future engine development, because Chrysler had a reputation of designing, bulletproof engines, very reliable engines, but no one ever really knew how much lighter they could make them. And I guess when you look at the competition, Ford, for example, had launched the 460 engine. That was a thin wall design. So there was a review of the way engines were being designed, and trying to increase efficiency and lighten the weight of some of these power plants. The first performance engine that they made, the oil pan apparently fell off. Not exactly, but there were only two screws left holding it in, and the block was so floppy and loose, there's too much flex in it. So that obviously needed to be strengthened. Speaking of the Hemi six cylinders, work on the 245 Hemi 6 started in 1966, and the engine was produced in 215, 245 and later 265 configurations, and it really responded well to an increase in carburation. The design of the engine was quite long, and it had a big bore, and the camshaft was long as well, and the distributor was toward the rear of the engine. So the torsional vibrations that were feeding into the camshaft and then into the distributor, so that was quite bad. So they had to really work hard to try and fix that. They couldn't really move the distributor because that would then change the casting of the engine block drastically. But they thought that the walls for the engine were quite thin. Everything was quite thin compared to what they'd done before. So they had to really beef up the pan rail and the main bearing bulkheads. So the Americans really did the 245 engine, and the Australian engineers were responsible for the 265. And the American engineers advised against doing a 265. They felt that it was getting beyond the scope of the engine in terms of capacity and durability. But as it turned out, it was, became an excellent engine. When the Australians were developing the engines, at first they couldn't get the engine to run endurance testing for more than 20 hours or so without dropping a valve or putting a hole in the piston. And this was testing that was done in the US, but then when the Australian engineers sort of looked into it, the Americans were running wide open throttle for the full test for 10 hours each to do 20 hours at full throttle. So they found out that they were using hot spark plugs, the ones that were designed, if your wife was driving the car around town at 30 miles an hour, it would stop the engine from fouling. But it made it very challenging for the engine to meet the durability standards with that hot plug. So basically what they did was they changed to a much colder set of plugs. I think they were made by Champion. And then when they did that, with the Australian engineers on board, they completed a 60-hour endurance schedule with cold plugs, and then the engine was fine. There was no issues whatsoever. So the Americans were, the lead designers on the engine, but, the Australian engineering staff were there too, and just in terms of making sure that, installation requirements and packaging requirements were designed to suit both the American and Australian use if they were deployed into the market. And they both like the more upright arrangement of the engine, just for simplicity and making it more successful in terms of access and so on. The Americans also wanted to see whether they could make a larger capacity engine, but more so as a possible truck engine. And they like the idea of being a good sized truck engine of about 300 cubic inches. In terms of the final engineering, that responsibility was then transferred to Australia, and the Australian engineers really were focused on high performance versions of the engine, and obviously they were very successful in developing that. In the end, from a US point of view though, it was never developed into a truck engine. It would have cost a fair bit more money to make a truck version of the engine, and they just didn't feel that they could justify the development and production costs. They had existing engines that really would just do the job. So the Americans never got their Hemi 6-cylinder, only the Australians did. The model range consisted of the Valiant sedan VG M41, the Valiant hardtop VG M23, the Valiant Safari wagon VG M45, the Valiant Pacer sedan VG S41, the Valiant Pacer hardtop, which was a new model, VG S23, the Valiant Regal sedan VG H41, the Valiant Regal hardtop VG H23, the Valiant Regal Safari wagon VG H45, the Valiant Regal 770 sedan, which was also VG H41, the Valiant Regal 770 hardtop VG H23, again shared with the Regal, and the Valiant Wayfarer Utility VG L20. And as per previous practice, there was also a heavy-duty variant of the Utility, which was marketed as a Dodge, and that was VG E20. As I said, big news was the engines in the 6 cylinders with the introduction of the Hemi. There was a 215 cubic inch 3.5 litre 6 cylinder, a 225 cubic inch 3.7 litre 6 cylinder, a 245 4 litre 6 cylinder, and a 318 5.2 litre V8. Transmissions were a choice of a 3-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic. The 215 cubic inch 3.5 litre Hemi 6 was actually added to the lineup early in 1971, and that replaced the 225 cubic inch 3.7 litre, which was still the slant 6. A long wheelbase VG Valiant VIP, sold as the Chrysler VIP, was also offered, and that was model code VG-P41. Exterior dimensions were similar to the previous VF, with the sedan coming in at 192.3 inches, which is 4,884 millimetres. The hardtop was 199.8 inches, quite a bit longer, or 5,075 millimetres. The VIP was 196.3 inches, or 4,986 millimetres, so actually shorter than the hardtop. The Utility was 192.4 inches, or 4,887 millimetres. Width was 69.7 inches, or 1,770 millimetres. The wheelbase for the sedan was 108 inches, or 2,743 millimetres. The hardtop was 111 inches, which was 2,819 millimetres, and the VIP was 112 inches, or 2,845 millimetres. So even though the VIP was shorter than the hardtop, it actually had a longer wheelbase for better balance, I think, less overhang. The wagon was also a 108-inch wheelbase, which is 2,743 millimetres, as was the Utility. It's believed that option E31, which was the 2-barrel Pacer, put out 195 horsepower. I'll just put the kilowatts there on the screen as well. That had a performance camshaft, smaller fan, and windage tray. Then there was the option of E34, which put out 235 horsepower. That was the 4-barrel carburetor, had a unique manifold, performance camshaft, a 3.80 bore, vibration dampers, dual plate clutch, peened engine internals, and also increased pressure capacity oil pump. There was also an option E35, which was a 4-barrel street pack carburetor and manifold. Had the 3.80 bore as per before. Performance camshaft, heavy-duty conrod bearings, dual-plate clutch, torque limiting strut, and also there was a normal pacer transmission which was made available for that option. The VG Pacers were also the first and the last to be offered in the hardtop body style, and there were 3 that were optioned with the E31 package and 3 were optioned with the E35 package. There are no VG Pacer hardtops that were available with the E34 option. So even with a 2-barrel, 245 horsepower Pacer, the car's performed pretty well. 0 to 60 miles an hour or 100 Ks in 8.8 seconds and a quarter mile in 16.4 seconds, which, is quite decent performance for back in the day. There's no doubt, though, that a 4-barrel Pacer could do the quarter mile in under 16 seconds, which is pretty amazing for a 6-cylinder car. There were some cool colour names too for the Pacers: Bondi Bleach White, Hot Mustard, Hemi Orange, and Little Hood Riding Red. Another cool colour was Varshi Blue, which was a blue. Apparently there were 3,385 Pacer sedans built and 1,162 hardtops. It's actually quite a hire number. I'm surprised that they made that many. I remember my brother had a VG VIP in the green with the Fireball 318 V8. And speaking of the Fireball, that's a 318 cubic inch 5.2 litre engine, and that had 230 brake horsepower, 172 kilowatts, and 340 foot-pounds of torque, or 461 newton meters. That was a really nice car, and I remember he paid very little for it. Had a lovely interior, had the bucket seats, the floor shift, the Fireball engine, as I said. They also had a nice new grille on the VIP, and the rear end treatment was also new. Those cars, I thought, were very nicely done, and they were so inexpensive for such a long time. Now they're quite a sought after car. You just don't really see them that often. Another car that you don't see very often in the hardtop range was the A78, which was a roof extension option. I think that's called the Mexicana, or I don't know whether that was the official name or whether it's just a colloquial name, but like a Mexicana pack. And that had those extended sail panels. A little bit similar to, I guess, 68 Dodge Charger type style. We've got these sort of buttress pillars at the back. There's no doubt, though, that the Valiant range was coming under increasing competition. I mentioned this in the previous episode, if you haven't watched that on the VF episode. But, when you look at, it was coming up against now XW Falcon range and XY Falcon range. In the case of Holden, it was coming up against, HT and HG Holdens, and also almost the beginning of the HQ range, which is a completely new generation of car. And so there's no doubt that, Chrysler were starting to be challenged with increasing competition. The front track on all models, except for the VIP, was 57.9 inches, which is 1471 millimeters. The Pacer's not listed here. I would have thought that would have had a wider track as well. Maybe some of the subscribers would know. The VIP had a front track of 58.5 inches, or 1486 millimeters. The rear track on all models, except for the VIP, was 56.1 inches, or 1425 millimeters. The VIP had a rear track of 56.6 inches, or 1438 millimeters. Curb weight varied from around 2,890 pounds for a manual 6-cylinder sedan, which is 1,311 kilos, up to around 3,115 pounds or 1,413 kilos for a automatic V8 hardtop. A VIP actually weighed in the V8 form at 3,235 pounds, which is 1,467 kilograms. The 6-cylinder was 3,020 pounds for the VIP, or 1,370 kilograms. So just under 100 kilograms difference between a 6-cylinder and a V8. As per Chrysler's usual practice, the cars had comprehensive instrumentation, including speedometer, fuel gauge, temperature gauge, an alternator gauge, and also oil warning lamp. As per normal, Valiant's front torsion bar suspension and rear leaf spring. In the Valiant Pacer, there was the optional A84 manual track pack option. That meant a lower gear ratio. So, for example, first gear 2.12 to 1 on that pack versus 2.95 to 1 on the standard manual transmission. Torque Flight automatic transmissions, of course, were also offered. Sterling moss was used in the advertising to promote the Hemi engines, which was a bit of a coup, I think, for Chrysler Australia to feature someone like Sterling Moss. The 215 engine, 3.5 litre, that was 140 horsepower or 104 kilowatts, and it had 200 foot-pounds of torque or 271 newton meters. The Hemi 245 engine, which is a 4-litre engine, that put out 165 brake horsepower or 123 kilowatts and 235 foot-pounds of torque or 318 newton meters. So really good engines, great reputation, very durable, reliable, and very torquey motors, and they really did give a very good account of themselves. So that was for the single barrel carburetor version. There was also a Hemi 245 2-barrel version, and that put out 185 brake horsepower or 138 kilowatts and 240 foot-pounds of torque or 325 newton meters. And then there was another option, which was the E31 option, which was a Pacer 2-barrel engine. And then there was a Pacer 4-barrel option, which was E34. Funnily enough, when you look in the catalogues, it actually says power not rated for the 2-barrel and 4-barrel engine. I've seen various production numbers for the VG. One number's quoted at 52,944. I'm very dubious on that number. It's almost exactly the same as the VF. I believe the correct number is 46,374. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode on the VG Valiant. Please don't forget to hit the like button. It really does help the channel, and it means that the channel gets seen by more enthusiasts. Also, don't forget to subscribe as well so you don't miss out on an episode. Thanks very much for watching. Check out the other Valiant episodes on the playlist, and we'll see you next time. Bye.